On April 26, 1986, the world's worst nuclear accident occurred at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine. The explosion spread radiation throughout the area, releasing 400 times more than the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. In the months and years following the accident, hundreds of thousands of people were evacuated from their homes, some unable to ever return. So what happened at Chernobyl, and how bad is it now? On the day of the accident, nuclear operators were in the middle of performing safety tests when one of the reactors suffered a power spike. This set off a chain reaction of explosions and caused the reactor to rupture and catch fire. The explosion sent radioactive fallout into the atmosphere, contaminating Belarus and much of the Western Soviet Union and Europe. More than 350,000 people were forced to evacuate and resettle. The accident directly killed 31 people through fatal radiation doses or physical injury. In the years since the accident, the United Nations has attributed about 6,000 cases of thyroid cancer in the surrounding areas to the disaster. However, some sources have placed the number of dead at nearly 1 million. Part of the controversy surrounding the accident stems from the delayed response and intentional cover-up of subsequent health issues. The Soviet Union government directed doctors to miscategorize cases of acute radiation poisoning as an unrelated medical condition in order to lower the perceived effects of the disaster. Later, the government claimed that a radiation exposure limit 350 times the modern U.S. standard was safe in order to repopulate contaminated areas. After the accident, the damaged reactor was encased in a giant concrete sarcophagus to prevent more radioactive spread, and it is intended to be replaced with a more robust shelter in 2017. The overall cleanup effort required about 500,000 workers, a number of whom were unaware of the severity of radiation and have since suffered from poor health or died. Today, the Chernobyl power plant is surrounded by an 18-mile exclusion zone, covering about 1,000 square miles. The area is essentially an abandoned ghost town, and visitors are prohibited from entering. However, roughly 200 elderly residents who have refused to leave still live near the radioactive site, along with a number of illegal squatters. An interesting side effect of the ban on people is that the exclusionary zone has become one of the world's largest wildlife preserves. In the decades since the accident, the damage to both the environment and people's health has been incalculable, and the cleanup efforts are still in progress today. However, much of what we know about dealing with nuclear disasters comes from Chernobyl. The knowledge has saved countless lives in terms of improved safety precautions and responding to other disasters like Fukushima in 2011.
The Chernobyl nuclear plant, located in the city of Pripyat, northern Ukraine, near the border of Belarus. Chernobyl is now owned by the Ukrainian government and was commissioned in the year 1977. The plant was also known as the V.I. Lenin Nuclear Power Station. This is the first ever nuclear power station on Ukrainian soil. Chernobyl operated with 4 nuclear reactors of the RBMK-1000 series, which is a device used to initiate and control a sustained nuclear chain reaction for the purpose of electricity generation. Each reactor produced 1,000 megawatts of power, which was used to supply 10% of Ukraine. Here we can see a timeline of operation for each reactor. Reactor 1, 1977 to 1996, Reactor 2, 1978 to 1991, Reactor 3, 1981 to 2000, Reactor 4, 1983 to 1986. The following are accidents which occurred at Chernobyl. In 1982, Reactor 1 had a partial core meltdown, which was repaired and became fully operational within a matter of months. 1986, Reactor 4's explosion was the worst accident recorded for a nuclear plant in history. Unit 4 was completely destroyed. However, it is now enclosed in a concrete and lead sarcophagus to prevent radioactive material from escaping. In 1991, Reactor 2 power plant utilized one large turbine hall for all four reactors without any separating walls. Fire broke out in Reactor 2 turbine while being idle for repairs. Faulty switch caused a current surge to the turbine, igniting insulating material on some electrical wiring. This led to hydrogen being leaked into the turbine, causing a fire to start in the roof, which led to failure of one of the supporting trusses, hence causing the roof to collapse.
Не понимаешь, что Фомин делает на атомной электростанции? Он же обычно работал на обыкновенных электростанциях.
А, тогда ясно, почему он сказал, что управлять реактором так же просто, как электросамоваром.
Some of the external challenges the Chernobyl plant had to deal with whilst in operation are: Number 1. The safety test for the nuclear reactor was designed by electrical generator specialists, rather than a nuclear reactor specialist. Therefore, there was limited knowledge of the operations of a nuclear power plant, making the test unsuitable. Number 2. Chernobyl's director Viktor Bakharnov and his senior managers rushed to get reactor number 4 opened, so him and his party bosses could win substantial bonuses. This led to design flaws, such that the roof for reactor number 4 was made from combustible material, rather than uncombustible material, therefore increasing the danger levels in the plant. Number 3. Deputy Chief Engineer Anatoly Dyatlov was driven to complete the test because of tragic events that occurred prior. He was entrusted with installing nuclear reactors into submarines in Siberia, when a nuclear accident occurred, supposedly as a result of his actions, exposing him to 200 rems of radiation, which is 3 lifetimes worth of radiation. His son then died of leukemia, making him a lot more driven. This contributed to his arrogance, which made him a pivotal factor in the disaster.
engineer involved possessed certain value systems that determined how they acted on the day the construction of the reactors began and the day of the disaster. Those who designed and constructed the reactors chose to follow a value system based on money. During construction, they cut corners, deviated from set designs, and made assembly violations. This was a major cause of the disaster since the reactor's design was flawed. The higher-ups, managers, and plant directors knew about these violations and depended on their value system of self-preservation. They told no one of these faults until the days of the trials. This resulted in the deaths of many an innocent engineer since the inadequate safety procedures were used and ended up causing the disaster instead of preventing it. In operations on the night of the disaster, Anatoly Dyatlov, Deputy Chief Engineer of Reactor 4, was a very proud man. He was strong-willed, confident, and stubborn. Unfortunately, he followed his stubbornness more than anything on this night, not only deviating from proper experiment guidelines, but also forcing other engineers to follow him. He ignored the objections of other concerned engineers. Alexander Akimov and Leonid Toptunov were engineers who followed a value system based on humility, cooperation, and other-mindedness, to list a few. They voiced their opinions of the unsafeness of the experiment, urging the Dyatlov to stop while they still could. Unfortunately, their characters weren't as strong as the Dyatlov.
Так положено по инструкции. Это верно, Анатолий Степанович. Это абсолютно верно. Если мы извлечем регулирующие стержни, управлять реактором нам после этого становится почти невозможно. Как же испытания не проводить из-за таких кретинов, как вы?
8 hours after the explosion, Gorbachev only has scant information on the situation.
Первая информация была такой. Авария.
The first information consisted of accident and fire.
Исходя из того, что взрыва нет. И это...
Not a word about an explosion. At first, I was told there hadn't been an explosion. The consequences of such false information were particularly dramatic.
Based on discussions, it can be concluded that the major value systems that affected the cause of the disaster can be listed as money, pride, and self-preservation. Learning about what really happened during this disaster and what caused the disaster shocked us. There were so many corrupt value systems, which, by sheer numbers, overran the good ones, cutting corners, deliberately deviating from safety parameters, withholding information from the public, and even the treatment of those affected. It was all too sad. We, as engineers, can do better. We must do better, and put the safety of everyone above all else. That is our duty.